Welcome very much to our debate about reducing energy dependency from hostile Russia. We have this problem. Russia is intervening in the European Union, is very active politically and in many aspects, and we really have to discuss how to reduce systematically the influence and the capabilities of Russia to do that. And so we call on the Europeans to halve the Russian energy imports into the European Union, including also EFTA-CEFTA, that means all of Europe, a free Europe as I define it, from CEFTA, EFTA to the EU, and that we really make sure that by 2024, in more or less 4 years, we have half of the volume of oil, gas, nuclear, and coal imported into the European Union, because we have a trade deficit with Russia. We import more from the value of 83 billion from Russia than we exported. Yeah. And that's really very big problem. And we basically fund the capabilities of Russia to intervene in Libya, Syria, Ukraine, Georgia, and politically we fund that by our energy consumers. And we have to systematically reduce that. Yeah? And 83 billion is a loss for Europe. It means that Russia has these capacities, and it's totally wrong, and we have to really reduce that and half it. That should be possible with a segmented and smart strategy, because it's mainly the four items: oil, gas, nuclear, coal, and we have to discuss how to reduce that systematically in the next 4 years, and then reduce it again. If Russia still behaves like it does now, we further reduce it. And this will be the clear strategy for making clear to the Russian political actors that they cannot, with our money, aggress us. It's really nonsensical that we allow that, and that's wrong. So we have to see that we improve the climate with that. It's very good to burn less carbon. That's very good for the environment. That's very good for our trade balance. And that's also quite obvious that we have to import less of this dirty Russian oil, gas, nuclear, coal. And we have to see where we are dependent on the Russians and what we can replace. So the EU import on crude oil from Russia is about 30%, yeah? And that's quite a lot. 13%, 13% of our uranium comes from Russia, and over 40% of our gas. And also a significant part is from the coal. Also, the coal is quite a significant level, and we have to systematically discuss all the various actions and segments. So coal, we don't like coal, it's dirty, and so we want to reduce it. But we cannot reduce coal and then import more from Russia. That would be ridiculous. And so we have to use our own coal. We have to make sure we use less coal. We have to see where are other suppliers of coal and systematically reduce the Russian aspect of it. And this is very important. And so we have now 41% of our coal is coming from Russia. And we should try maybe to end this completely and import from other suppliers. We have the United States, we have Colombia, we have also South Africa, Australia. There are other suppliers from friendly countries. We have also coal in Kosovo, for example, and in other countries, in Poland. And so we have to burn that, and we have to use that, and not somehow subsidize Russia with our energy politics. That's really a nonsensical thing. So let's go to coal in Kosovo. I have already outlined there's a lot of coal reserves. So we have now at the moment we import 134 million tons of coal from Russia. And no, that's the overall import numbers. 41% is from hostile Russia, so quite a lot. Over 41% of 134 million is coming from Russia. And it's subsidies for the Russian, and they are aggressing us, and so obviously we have to find alternatives. In Kosovo, there are 15 billion tons of brown coal available. Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah? So why not replace the Russian imports with the Kosovo imports? And make sure that we somehow have, we support the Kosovo economic development and not Russian capabilities. So how to do that? Obviously, we need an agency for European coal, which is co-owning with the governments which have the resources but cannot lift them, like Poland, but also Kosovo, and to co-own these resources and then to lift it together, funded by the EIB. So the aim cannot be just to end coal and coal and coal. No, but to reduce our energy dependency from Russia. That's the most important goal we have at the moment. Yeah, it's totally nonsensical to subsidize Russia, which is so anti-European power at the moment in all aspects. So let's come to the question of nuclear. Yeah, did you know that we import 13% of our uranium from Russia? And you know why? There's a big debate, should we have nuclear or not? But some countries really love that. And it's part of our energy mix. So it's not to really end nuclear power, that's totally unrealistic, but to end uranium imports from Russia and import it from somewhere else, from, for example, Niger, or in Africa, or from Australia, or from Canada, from the United States, or from Kazakhstan. And that's totally possible. And that would be a big help as well, one important sector. And then the Rosatom, the Russian state energy monopoly, is building power plants in Finland, in Bulgaria, Czech Republic, and Slovakia, and in Hungary. Various stages of this project are under discussions already happening, and that's totally wrong. How come that Russian state is building nuclear power in NATO countries? I mean, I must have misunderstood something about what we're doing. And that's totally off limits, and we really have to change that and end it. Basically, how to end it? It's very simple to sell them to the EIB, these projects, and then to do that together with, for example, the French nuclear company EDF. Yeah, why not? Yeah? You know, it's a powerful company, it's strong enough, it has experience with nuclear power plants, and it's much better the French do it, or Westinghouse from America does it, than the Russian state in the form of Rosatom is doing this Eastern European power plants. That's totally wrong. So again, I propose EIB to build up an agency for nuclear power and to bring in these projects from the countries who want to do them, and to Europeanize these issues, and to end the projects from Rosatom. Obviously, we have to buy them, and to make sure there is no economic loss for Rosatom. We don't want to hurt them, but we don't want to make business with them inside the European continent. Yes, when it comes to gas and petrol, obviously we need higher taxes on that one. That's for a low tax movement, that's ETR, obviously a big issue. But really, on some issues, it's justified to make higher taxes if it's for energy independence. And it's also helping the climate and for the environment and for the trade balance. But mostly, I always think about our strategic independence. We cannot be totally dependent on Russia and then have this kind of aggression levels from Russia financed by our energy consumers. Yeah? So a 10% energy independence and transition tax is the best way to fund this transition, and also to build the energy infrastructure we need from the Baltics to the Black Sea to the Balkans in order to have energy independence achieved. Yeah? And so we can easily justify such an import tax by the fact that we don't have a free trade agreement with the Russian Federation, and we will not have one. But we will have one with the USA and with the Gulf states and with Iraq, Azerbaijan, Australia and ASEAN. And these are the major importers of carbon and gas. And so we can do that. Yeah? We can really justify that also towards the WTO and also towards the whole world. If you have a free trade agreement with the EU, you can bring your carbon energy without the extra tax. If you don't have, we will have an energy independence tax on Russian gas and petrol. And so we somehow can make sure that also the other more expensive production sites are competitive towards Russian imports. And so reduce our dependency on Russian gas and petrol. Because that's very important. We cannot completely cut it to zero, but we can make it more expensive. Yes, and there's also this new opportunity coming up with the gas in the Eastern Mediterranean. And there's this conflict with Turkey, Israel, Greece, and everybody fighting very much and almost fighting. Luckily, they are all in NATO or the American allies. So the Americans basically have these countries to keep them peacefully in order to make sure that they can somehow manage these resources. But that's a task for the European Union. Isn't it logical to have, these are all our allies and our partners, to set up an EU agency for gas exploration in the Eastern Mediterranean, offer a stake to all the countries, the 7 countries from Libya to Turkey to Lebanon to Israel and Greece and Cyprus, and they can all be minority shareholders. The European Investment Bank is a majority shareholder, and they have anyhow no money to lift these resources. All these countries are close to bankruptcy and on the end of the fiscal limits. So I don't see how they will do it. They will give it just to a big international gas corporate, maybe to Gazprom, and then we are even more dependent. I mean, that would be a complete nonsense. So an EU agency or joint venture owned by the EU as a state union and with the other states partner, and then they can subcontract to some international suppliers from the EU, from our NATO allies, and then we can exploit these treasures and we can replace the Russian gas. And that's a much more logical way to do it than we currently have conflict about treasures which anyhow we are not able to lift. So this is basically the main concept. I have also made a further EU agency for gas exploration jointly, EU and East Med. So here are the various countries and the regions and the lines. And this is the third one. But instead of fighting about it, we can lift it together. We can be rich together. The Greeks can repay their debts. Turkey can be back to the euro and also pay down, stabilize the economy. So can Lebanon and Egypt, and we can help them all. They help us. We anyhow will be the main consumer of this gas, so it's much better. It's regulated under the European system from the beginning, and we keep peace and we have prosperity in the East Med. Anyhow, a very poor and conflict-ridden area, but strategically very important. And with such an agency, we have a much better way forward. And we can somehow strategically reduce this high level of dependency which we have towards Russia on the gas market. We can really compete and we can replace that. And we can somehow see if we go to 20% maybe in the 2030s of imports from Russia. And that would be a big step forward. Yes. And Russian petrol, obviously, petrol is not so easy to replace, the 30% from Russia, but, we have options. We have options in Iraq, in Azerbaijan, in Kazakhstan, in the Gulf. And then let's have a better cooperation with them. We cannot win all the battles at once. Yeah, obviously, we would like all of these countries to democratize better, but, none of these countries has tanks in Ukraine, in Syria, in Libya. Basically, we have to focus, and let's reduce our dependency on Russia. Also work closer together with Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, and Iraq and the Gulf Cooperation Council. Conclude free trade agreements and make sure there is competition, much more competition, and the replacement of this huge 30% import quota which Russia has at the moment. We also have to go into energy transition and make sure that we really reduce carbon in mobility in 2 stages. By 2040, there shouldn't be any carbon used outside of exception and niche markets in mobility in Europe. In public transport, we can be much faster. 2025. No new cars registered in the European Union which still use carbon in 2030. Or maybe, let's say, 2 more years. But let's tell the consumer in 10 years we don't allow that anymore. You can still use your old cars for another 10 years transition period, but there's an alternative. There is electromobility. And electromobility might, we need more technology, so let's invent it, let's find it, let's do it. We need more infrastructure, let's build it. But, let's invest in that. But make sure, and by the way, our cities will be cleaner, our health will be better, our climate will be safer, all perfect. But most important, we don't burn Russian carbon anymore. And we can systematically tell the Russians, we don't need it. And so we don't need this Russian influence, and they have less money to buy influence in the European Union. So very much yes to electromobility. Actually, in the publicly state-owned companies and the whole procurement sector organized by the state, let's phase out buying carbon-powered cars by 2022. Let's not buy them when the state buys them or state companies. We have such a huge sector and they are not so price sensitive. So let's go. And that leads, of course, the transformation to the infrastructure, and that to have these filling stations and all the technology change, because that's a huge sector, and that's one you can order as a state. You can say no to carbon mobility in public transport, in state-powered, state-owned vehicles, in state-owned companies, and that's really a huge sector, and that can be done very fast. Let's do it. Yeah. And then we come also to what the Europeans have invested in the Russian energy sector. I mean, that is a big blackmail potential. That's a real big problem. And then you have these aspects of dominance, of blackmailability, because we have built 75% of the FDI in Russia, and that's from the European Union companies. It's huge because of this energy link. So let's sell that to the EIB. I'm normally in favor of privatization, but in this case, let's save these companies. Let's give them the opportunity and the option to sell it to the EIB, and then you at least have a state actor, a state-backed actor, who can gradually sell this to other companies, and probably manage it with more leverage towards Russia, and make sure that these companies are no longer in this direct blackmail situation. And so this can be part of a European energy company, which the EIB owns, and they can own also these Russian energy assets, which are currently privately held, and then they sell it to the EIB if they want. Or, if not, they can also keep it, but you will have many problems, I think, with keeping Russian energy assets in the next decade, because there is this strategy, I think, in place, and the situation with Russia won't get any more easy in the coming months and years. So OMV is a very good example, because I'm also Austrian and it's very important for me, obviously. They got 2 gas fields in Russia during the EU sanctions. One is not really closed, the financial closing didn't happen because of the recent situation, but there is this Yuzhne Russkoye and the Achimov. This is all very bad, and this is openly questionable that during the EU sanctions, Austrian state company buys 2 gas fields. There's obviously a lot of questions attached to that. But then also very much give the OMV the opportunity to sell it to the EIB. That's, of course, as a state, we can carry bigger risks. But not, this kind of dubious deals. These are totally wrong. And so OMV should sell that, or sell it to the EIB, and gradually we have to disinvest from the Russian energy sector. FDI was anyhow a very critical question, because Russia has invested, for example, in Austria 27 billion, and it's questionable what kind of FDI that is. Mostly is capital flight money or other kind of money laundering happening, from Russian who want to secure parts of their assets in Austrian property and in Austrian whatever investments. It's not very big commercial investments, that might be sure. It's not production companies, retail chains, or whatever. This is basically parking money into safe assets and for whatever reasons. And everybody who has seen the Navalny video about the Tyrolean mountains, a very special occasion, probably was one of the reasons why Navalny was poisoned, because he was really showing one by one how leading politicians of the United Russia party are money laundering in Austria, their assets of millions. Yeah? You can see the video directly. But it's on YouTube, just to type in Navalny subtitles in Austria and you will find it. Yeah? And this is really has to be investigated. All of this kind of Russian FDI, they call it, has to be investigated, has to be clarified, has to be asked and checked with the Russian tax authorities, and has to be in a central register. Is it really a credible FDI? Is this serious? Where does the money come from? Is it taxed? This is very important. And we have to also reassess all the Russian investments in the EU. All of them, when it's a strategic level. Yeah? These have to be reassessed. Should the Russian state, in the form of Gazprom or other entities, own critical infrastructure in the European Union in this moment of time? I don't think so. Yeah? And that obviously leads to the Nord Stream 2 and the whole pipeline issue. But this kind of critical infrastructure, we cannot allow to have a state with that kind of activities against us. Yeah? We cannot allow them to own that. Yeah? So basically, it's very clear Gazprom has to disinvest from all the strategic infrastructure and then to sell it again to the EIB, obviously. And then the EIB to manage that and, of course, recompensate Gazprom. But no kind of direct authority link can be allowed between a Russian state company and a critical infrastructure, no matter what. Yeah? This is simply impossible. Yes, and then obviously we can go for this register and see where most of the Russian FDI is going into Cyprus, Austria, Switzerland, British Virgin Islands, Netherlands. We have to talk to all these leading companies. These are all small countries like Switzerland, Austria, British Virgin Islands, Netherlands, and relatively small countries like Netherlands and Austria. And they have most of the Russian investment. Probably there's something wrong in the jurisdiction in Ireland, in Luxembourg, in Austria, because there's no logical reason that so much of the Russian FDI is in Cyprus, of all places, just because it's beautiful. Yeah. So anyhow, the question of Nord Stream 2, now it's almost built. To not build it probably is quite unrealistic. But what it has to be done, we have to talk to the Russians and say, you cannot own critical infrastructure and you will be recompensated, but you have to sell it towards the EIB. And then the EIB to reassess this project according to our needs and to the European priorities, and also not to exclude Poland and the Baltics, but to include them. And, to have, of course, infrastructure is good, always good, yeah. But then to do it according to our European priorities and not to the Russian priorities. I think that should be us setting our agendas and deciding our common priorities and not the other way around. Yeah. So what we need is a joint energy independence task force between NATO and EU, and reassess our joint European relation of all countries, EU, NATO, and CEFTA, EFTA, to really see where we can do that, and then to decide to go 10% minus every single year in the gas imports into Europe, and start, of course, with our NATO ally, United Kingdom, which is the biggest gas consumer, and the second is Germany, Italy, Netherlands, and then Turkey. But only Germany and the United Kingdom, Italy, they take already half of it, basically, and even more, much more, from 150. It's basically these three countries who are taking most of the gas. And so really go to the big countries and say, Germany, Italy, United Kingdom, look for replacement, go down 10% every single year. That's one of the NATO targets to reduce our dependency. when basically NATO is a defensive alliance against Russia. So why buy so much from Russia? It's not logical. Anyhow, I have made this closing slides on that. It's now going from the energy a little bit to the different things, but Russia is really using the money also to buy influence. We had now another spy scandal in Austria, and we have a long tradition in spy scandals paid by Russia in Austria. And this kind of complicity is really wrong. But we are basically funding that because our failed energy policy of the European states, and it's not the European Union, it's our states who were like addicted to Russian carbon for too long because it's cheap and it's easy, and the Soviet Union built all the infrastructure, and so we have it. And then this is getting so lucrative that basically this money is recycled for political purposes to keep exactly that system going. And then, that's really totally wrong. And all these things are documented now, court cases. So I can just appeal, let's make sure less money moves from Europe into Russia yearly, 10% minus in the volume, and strategically uranium, coal, and gas and energy. And this is very important. And then to really Russia squeeze it where it hurts, and give Russia less opportunity to buy influence and also wage wars and fund all these terrible activities Russia is doing, especially the last 12 years since the start of the Second Cold War. And Russia is doing all these activities with our money, with our energy consumers, which have no other choices because our politicians are not able to redirect their energy markets away from a hostile neighbor. That's really very wrong, and we have to change that. So we will not go to all the other things now with systematically reducing Russian influence with all the murders, and this will be the next video. And for now, I would like to thank you very much and remind you there's a new, maybe also that's quite a meaningful closing. This kind of energy links also, of course, produce political visits and visibility, and then Austria is turned into like a pro-Russian state in some ideas, and then you have these beautiful pictures which Putin can use to somehow tell his electorate that Austrian young leaders love him, and then we have all this negative press. It's all a consequence of this massive wrong direction trajectory of our energy market, and that really has to change. Yeah, let's not go down all the line with the killings and cyber warfare. And I'm not finished with the last one, but we have too many topics already. So let's close it here now. I want to thank you for your attention. I have made this video now on the energy market. It's for the 2nd of September, and I would like to thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed it and come back soon. Thank you. Bye.